This is going to be hopefully a quick video update to my previous video on how to make cheap and easy landing gear for scratch build planes. My first video included having to do some basic soldering, form two pieces together, but since that time I've come up with a much easier method of putting this landing gear together, and requires no soldering whatsoever, just a little bit of cutting and bending and gluing. So just as a quick look, this is the basic shape, and it's made as a unit standalone with Velcro attached, so it can be swapped from model to model easily, and also on landings that are a little too rough, it will break away from the plane and come apart at the Velcro instead of just destroying the foam. And I've been flying my models with this setup for quite some time now, and had a lot of good performance with it. And as you can see, it's pretty basic. It's one piece of music wire that's cut and bent, a couple gift cards, some Velcro, some Gorilla Glue and zip ties, and that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go over real quick how to form this and put it together, and let's get started. So basically, you'll need your implements of destruction. Will be a cutting tool, pliers, probably need a couple of them, some good cutting pliers. This music wire is hardened steel, so I went ahead and got a pair of these HK Porters. I mean, yeah, you have these loppers on these pliers, but these are more designed for just cutting wire, electrical wire, not this kind of music wire. This makes the job much easier because it's also a leveraged type of hinge, give you a lot more fulcrum and force on that. So that, obviously we need a few zip ties, we need our music wire, and I'll put a link in the description below of this video where I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I ordered this through Amazon, and for as much as I got, it was really cheap. I use this reaming tool that I got from another kit that I purchased for cutting Lexan for a little RC car model, and I use that when I need to make my holes through the gift cards. Gift cards are easy enough to come by. Almost anywhere you go, you can pick up a couple of gift cards. So at some point it becomes a hobby, at another point it becomes an obsession. Take your pick. And of course a measuring instrument of some sort. Typically I start with about 15 inches of music wire. I find that's a good average length to start with. And then as you're bending it, you can decide, if you want that length a little longer or shorter, and of course forming it. You can form these to stick out a little bit wider, but I like to keep them more on the straight side, and then that gives them a little bit more tension, rigidity when coming in for landings. And of course, I like to use the Gorilla Glue to sandwich the gift cards and foam. Of course, we'll be using some scrap Dollar Tree foam, and that is simply to give it some thickness in sandwiching the two gift cards together, because we're going to zip tie that music wire to one, and then of course you've got the zip tie on the opposite side, and sandwiching the Dollar Tree foam gives you another flat surface to attach the base. All right, so let's get started. So like I said, I start with 15 inches, so I will simply find my center. Basically, I wouldn't say a 90 degree, probably a little tighter than 90 degrees. And this wire is just crazy tight. So either a good set of pliers or some channel locks. But basically, you just want to get a good V-bend in there. And kind of what I use as a guide is, I'm going to secure this corner with one zip tie toward the front of the card, and then attach the two sides. So I want that V-bend to fit inside the card kind of as much as possible. So I still want to bend this one a little bit more. There we go. That looks about right. There we go. And like I said, because I'm going to have a zip tie securing a point here and then 2 secure points here, and I just find it works better if you can get it to fit within that dimension right there. So now that we have that, our next bend will be to send our axles down, and that's simply a 90-degree bend from that plane right there. And I would say that's probably about 2.5 inches. Yeah, right at about 2.5 inches. Gonna grab it on this side. Lock that down, and want to bend it about 90 degrees to that, like so. So, like I said, this is flat to the camera, and you can see 90 degrees. We're going straight down, and then the same on the opposite side. About 2.5 inches right there. Now, I don't take credit for this form, this shape of this music wire. I'm going to post a link below also to the flight test video where Bixler shows how they make their landing gear. And when I saw that video, I basically took that design. So this is his, and he could have also learned it from someplace else. I don't know, but where I got it from was his video. So I give credit to them for this form, because all I did was slightly modify the way I attached it to my models. I think this form works excellently. So now I've got that basic shape. Like I said, we've got the top of the V, which will fit in our card. This is our forks. So now all that's left is to bend out what will become the axle for the wheels. And then that's going to be just another 90-degree bend straight out. And here's where you decide, you know, how high do you want your landing gear to sit up. Typically, I kind of find anywhere from 4 to 3 inches is more than enough. Like I said, it just depends on how high you want that model to sit. For this one, I'm going to do 3.5. And typically what I do is I'll sight my pliers down the other wire. So basically, my view is like this. I'm looking at it like this. My plier is perpendicular to that line here. And now I'm just going to bend that out like so. And now we've got our first axle, basically. And then that was 3.5 at that bend. As long as that's checked for level, we'll do another 3.5 inches. Much easier to grab on the long side than the short side. There we go. And you basically bend it till you get them pretty straight. It doesn't have to be perfect at this point, because now what you want to do is lay it on your surface. And, you know, first you want to obviously make sure this sits flat, and then you can double check that. And actually, this one came out pretty good right off the bat. We're not too much wobbling here. And that is going to sit on our card like that. Our wheels will go on this. Now I can see spotting down the front here, the right side is a little bit more forward. So just a little bit of a bend to get that straight. And that's pretty good. Now the only thing left to do is attach it to the cards and sandwich them together. So to do that, basically what I do is I only got to make 3 holes in this card to pass my zip ties through. And what I'll do is I'll line this up about where I want it. And I know I need a zip tie right here. So I'll just kind of poke a small hole there. And this reamer really makes short work of making a hole. And the hole only needs to be big enough to pass the zip tie through. So a little bit more. And you only need the 1 hole, because basically what happens is you're going to double. There we go, perfect. Just big enough for that zip tie to pass through. And what we do is the locking part is going to go is going to be the part that's sandwiched in between. So if we want the printed side or the back side, whatever, the locking mechanism is going to go in the sandwich portion. So I'll pass that through like this, and that part won't pass through the hole, which is perfect. And basically what I'll do is go ahead and double that one back, make a loop, get that corner in there, bring that zip tie down, and then go ahead and let's lock it. And you don't have to go crazy tight with it. It just needs to hold this guy in place. I would say you don't want to go so tight that it deforms the card too much. And of course, if you use a thinner zip tie, I do have some smaller ones that I find tend to work a little bit better because they're easier to bend. But if you can, what you want to do is get this flat piece to lay flat. So I still got some that I need to pull through. And if I can't get it all the way, as long as I can get it close, we should be all right. There we go. There we go. So basically what happens is that is now going to pinch the front, and it's not going to stay perfectly on that corner bend, but it's toward the front, and that's what you want. And then, like I said, this part will lay on the inside. So now with that one in place, we can kind of eyeball where we need the next hole. So you got the one zip tie in the back, which will keep it from moving front to back. And then now you'll have two on the sides, which will keep these from separating. Just to show real quick, I think I've got some smaller zip ties. The first zip tie I use is probably 3/8. And this is a 1/8 zip tie. In my opinion, the 1/8 zip tie is really preferable. You pass it through once, pass it through twice to loop around the wire. Get that lock all the way toward the top. Pull that through and then go ahead and lock it in. And because this zip tie is smaller, it's a little more flexible, it's easier to deal with. And as long as your hole is smaller than the locking mechanism, I find it's not going to go anywhere. It's perfect. So that's in place. And then we just take our last one, pretty much line up where that one's going to be. And I want that one to come in just a little bit. I'm going to line that one up right here. Make another hole. It's more than big enough. And I'll pass my zip tie through here. So that's pretty good. Take our snips and cut off the trailing edges. And there we go. We're still pretty straight and true. And even after this is constructed, if a little bit of tweaking needs to be done, it's not hard to just bend those straight and make sure they're where you want them. But this looks pretty good to me. This one axle may need to come up just a little bit, but that's all right. So now the next step, you're halfway there. Your form is zip tied in. Now it's a matter of cutting out a couple pieces of foam core. And I say it from the Dollar Tree. And basically what I do is I take some scrap and then I just use one of my other cards to eyeball what size I need, and I cut it to be the same shape. In fact, I will just do that real quick. Just mark a line. Now obviously one of these will just go to this side of the card, but the other one we need to make reliefs to go around where the zip ties are. An easy way to get around that is just put it about where it goes, line it up. I press it down to kind of make me some indentations, and now I can see where those zip ties are. And Usually the easiest thing to do is I simply make some quick cuts and just completely cut that section of the foam core out. And then what will happen when you glue these together with the Gorilla Glue, when it activates and foams up, it will fill in these gaps. And that process in and of itself also adds strength to it because that Gorilla Glue will bind around these ties. So basically you've got that. Now fits right above around those zip ties. This will go on top of this guy and this one here. And then what I do is you're going to need some of these A-clamps. And basically what you'll do is once you get the glue in place, a couple of these A-clamps to keep pressure on the unit. And then once the Gorilla Glue is done, Velcro and put it on the plane. And the one other tip I would give is before you apply the glue, go ahead and take some sandpaper and scuff this up. It will help give you better adhesion. I have had a couple, the first ones that I made, where instead of them coming apart at the Velcro, it just delaminated basically. The glue failed, and it was because I hadn't scuffed up the card to give it a better bite. And it doesn't take much, really. I mean, just enough where you start to see the magnetic stripe or whatever's painted on the front start to scratch away. Like I said, just remove that sheen, basically. Take it from a gloss to a satin. And I guess obviously I could have sanded it first before I started building it, but just didn't think about it. I've done it both ways. I've left the paper on, I've taken the paper off, and whatever you feel like doing. Honestly, if you get a good adhesion, if you've moistened the surfaces well enough to activate the glue, I don't think removing the paper will make much of a difference. A little bit of water here. And I also use this opportunity. This will clean off any of that dust from sanding. So just clean those two surfaces off. And then I will go ahead and dampen. You don't want these soaking wet, but you want them damp. All right, so there we go. We got all our surfaces moistened. We got our clamp standing by. So now it's just a matter of smearing a little bit of glue on the surface. And the quick little dry fit, we know that's where she's going to go. All right, and so what we'll do is we'll take just a nice little thin bead of Gorilla Glue around the perimeter and down the middle. And then when you apply, give it a little bit of a smear. Get good contact. And then we're going to go ahead and put just a light bead between the two sandwiches. And again, give it a smear. A little bit of a sticking out. If I get a little bit of pressure coming back from a thick zip tie, just push it down. And then again, a nice bead of glue around the perimeter. And don't go too close to the perimeter. If you haven't used Gorilla Glue before, this stuff will expand once it activates. And then again, another little smear. And now, keeping everything lined up, put your A-clamps on. And let it cure. We're done. All right, so we are back after letting the Gorilla Glue cure. I typically let this set for a good 24 hours, come back to it the next day. And now, as Gorilla Glue is known to do, it's going to expand, but that is easily trimmed and cleaned off with a sharp razor blade. In fact, sometimes it'll just break off like styrofoam peanuts. And then with a sharp blade, just do a quick trim and clean up the sides. It really does come off pretty easily off the sides. We're left with a pretty clean set there. that once it's cured, it makes a pretty solid bond. This is now pretty much one unit, and it's going to take a lot to make that come apart. And now all that's left is to grab your wheels, and I like using these little wheel collars. I believe those are some that I got that came in from Hobby King. And now we just take one collar for the inside, snug it down real quick, stick our wheel on there. And probably need to move that in just a little bit more to get the other collar on. The outside collar, snug that one up tight. We just got to butt up the inside one, snug that one up. Repeat real quick. There we go. And that is now ready to be placed onto the bottom side of your model. Just as a quick example, tubes from another build, and then Velcro, female and male Velcro on either side, and then that gets attached like so, and there's your landing gear. Like I said, I really like this little design a little bit better than my first attempt because it's one piece of wire, no soldering involved, and real simple to make. It's even a little bit lighter than my first one because it eliminates that one piece of wire, and because you attach it to the plane with Velcro, in the event of a hard landing, that Velcro will give. I've seen it many a times. Just wanted to share that with you guys. I hope some of y'all find that useful and can adapt that or make improvements too. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm always curious to hear how others will improve it or modify it to fit their needs. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I hope that's some help.